ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to take this moment to say thank you for listening to the Real ResQ podcast. It means a lot to me that you enjoy these stories as much as I do. Since the start of this podcast, we've had a lot of support from all over the world. It has been amazing. Now, we have companies joining our team that also want to say thank you for all that you are doing out there standing the watch. These companies are offering discounts on their products as a way to support the rescue community and those tuning into the Real ResQ podcast. Just go to therealresq.com, click on sponsors, and see these incredible offers for yourself. This episode of the Real ResQ podcast is brought to you by Breeze Eastern, the world's only dedicated helicopter hoist and winch provider. Access, because when lives are at stake and conditions are challenging, clear communication is of the utmost importance. SR3 Rescue Concepts, because you don't know what you don't know. And VersaLifts, to be your best, you need to squat your best. Breeze Eastern, they dedicate themselves to our helicopter rescue world. Since the very first helicopter rescue in November of 1945, Breeze Eastern has designed and manufactured superior rescue hoist solutions. While much of the technology and the unique mission requirements have changed over the past 75 years, their commitment to the rescuers, the operators, and those being rescued has not. Contact them today by visiting them at breeze-eastern.com. The Access PNG wireless ICS system can bring cutting-edge wireless intercommunication system technology to any aircraft. The PNG system can be fully integrated into an existing ICS system or can be carried on and off as a mobile base station. They can go anywhere at any time on any aircraft. Plus, with the strongest and most robust waterproof handheld in the market, this system can take a hit and keep working. Their wireless intercom systems are designed to enhance situational awareness through improved communication capability. This system brings superior noise canceling technology to eliminate rotor wash and engine noise from your ICS. The Access PNG wireless system is currently deployed in more than 1,800 public safety, air ambulance, and search and rescue aircraft worldwide. I have personally used the Access system in 4 different countries and on 5 different airframes. It is awesome. If you want more information, contact them today at axnes.com. That's AXNES.com. You just make sure you tell them Quinny sent me. SR3 Rescue Concepts is a training company that can help your helicopter training. They train daytime, nighttime, aerial firefighting, hoist, long line, fast rope, rappel, and more. They can assist your program with standardization and safety checks or just an FAA annual refresher. With the certified flight instructor pilots and experienced crew, they are ready to help your agency keep up to date with current techniques, rules, regulations, and equipment. Plus, right now, SR3 is offering 10% off anything in their web store with the promo code, all capital letters, Real ResQ, REALRESQ. Plus, they are offering another 10% from their partners Petzl and their equipment. All you got to do is send an email to info@sr3rescueconcepts.com. Mention this podcast, the Real ResQ podcast, and they'll take care of the rest. And VersaLifts. When you're at the gym working on your squats, building your leg strength for the next rescue mission, depth matters. If you're like me, getting below parallel on your squats is tough. Well, allow me to introduce VersaLifts heel inserts. These gems have become one of my new favorite accessories in my gym bag. Simply place them into your regular training shoe, either on top or underneath the insole, and bam! You've got a heel lift benefit of a weightlifting shoe, but the comfort and flexibility of your regular trainers. So the next time your workout just has heavy squats, grab your V2 strength inserts. Or how about a run, pull up, push up, air squat, and another run? Grab your V2 endurance inserts. Or my own personal workout of running, clusters, and ring muscle ups. Grab your original V2 inserts and go crush it. Check them out today at vlifts.com or on Instagram at VersaLift. And when you're ready to get a few pair of your own, make sure you get your 10% off with the Real ResQ discount code. Squat well, friends. Coming up next, we've got a very different and unique type rescue story. You know, if you go into the dictionary and you define rescue, it means to save someone or something from a dangerous or difficult situation. Well, our next guest did exactly that. Him and his wife went out of their comfort zone, thought a little God's calling, and landed in a place to help a few in need. It's an amazing story, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I do. So please welcome our next guest, Mr. Shane Rothlisberger. My name is Jason Quinn. I am United States Coast Guard Rescue Swimmer number 500. These are my rescues and rescues from those of us that put our lives on the line every day so others may live. This is the Real ResQ Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Real ResQ Podcast. I've got a little treat for us today. I'm pretty pumped about this one too. What else is new? I'm pumped about all you guys that come on and share stories. But this guy in particular, Mr. Shane Rothlisberger. What's up, Shane? How are you, brother?
Doing great. Great to be here, Jason.
Good deal, man. So you and I have an interesting story where we met at the last CrossFit Games. You are the owner and operator of VersaLift, now sponsoring the podcast and helping us out. Whoop, whoop. Just going to throw that out there. 10% off what? But in our conversation, as we started setting up, you said to me, buddy, I got kind of a cool rescue story if you're interested in hearing it, which then related to your family, which then related to kids. And I was like, what? And poof, here we are. Is that about right?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. You know, yeah, it would certainly be a unique story. All the stories that you've shared on your podcast are just incredible and unique in their own way. But yeah, this one's a little outside the box.
I like that. I like that a lot. And so I'll tell you what, Shane, before I get too far into it, just give us a little background about kind of who you are and how you got into going to rescue. I'm going to call them family members now.
Hey, right on. Yeah. I mean, the first thing that usually causes people's jaws to drop is when I tell them I have 9 kids.
Nine kids, good Lord.
Yep. That's pretty much the standard reaction there. So my wife and I have, we had 5 biological children, and then we adopted 2 children, and so brought it to 7. And then we had just felt called to another adoption several years later, and we started that process. And then here a year ago, we had our 6th biological child 7 years after we thought we were done having biological kids. And yes, hold the jokes. I know how it happens. But,
and you saw that one coming is what you're saying.
I did. But nonetheless.
Do we need to have a talk?
Hey, it's been dealt with.
Oh, good. Roger that.
My wife made an appointment for me like a month after we found out we were pregnant. It's like, okay, yep, we're done. So
God bless
anyway,
her.
yeah. So we brought home our 3rd adopted child about 8 weeks after we had the surprise 6th biological child. So for those doing the math, it brought it up to.
So out of curiosity, what's the age difference between number 1 and number 9?
Yeah, closing in on 16 and then 1. So there's a 15-year
Oh
gap.
my good Lord. God bless you.
Yep,
I got 3 beautiful girls, and they're all in their
Right
20s, and buddy, I am done. Except for
bro,
one
bro,
right now, so.
You're living now, man.
Yeah, totally. Empty nested adventures.
Yeah. I was doing the math, 2 years ago, where I was like, man, we're only like what 8-9 years away from being empty nesters, and then and then that clock got reset
No,
at 0.
yeah.
So
You're 17 years away.
we're gonna have grandkids like growing up with our youngest. It's just the way it's gonna go, man. Yeah.
Oh, love it.
But yeah, so we're a unique family in that sense. We usually get like the homeschool jokes, and those drive a huge van and all that. We do drive a huge van, but we are public school family, and so we're a little strange in that way.
Oh my gosh. I love it.
Yeah, no, we're having good. My wife and I, we married 18 years, got the 6 kiddos, 16 ranging down to 1, 6 bio, 3 adopted. Actually was in pastoral ministry for 17 years. That was kind of my primary vocational calling. A phenomenal church family that we just love dearly. And about 6 years ago, I started VersaLifts just as a kind of a hobby side business. My wife and I both drank the CrossFit Kool-Aid, and so we
Culture.
Yeah. Oh, we're totally in the cult. I mean, it's always weird being like, I'm a pastor and I'm in a cult. It's called CrossFit.
Yeah.
And we were like, wait, what? But yeah, I came up with the product. It actually was a kind of birthed out of the need to generate some revenue to cover the extreme cost of the adoptions. And so that's a whole kind of another story that we won't get into today, but nonetheless, our company VersaLifts is forever intertwined with our adoption stories that we're going to talk about a little bit today. And but yeah, just a year ago, actually, our family moved to be closer to our parents. My dad's going through some pretty significant health challenges right now, and we felt like it was the best thing, the right thing for us to move closer. So we moved our family and moved our business and everything. And fortunately, I was able to make the jump from full-time vocational ministry to leading VersaLifts full-time. And so that's what we're doing now. So
that is awesome.
Yeah.
I like crazy. That. Yeah. Put a lot of faith in that one. Yes.
Oh man. Yeah. It's equal parts exhilaration and terror. Like, let's just go in and acknowledge every small business owner knows that feeling.
I like it. Sweet.
Yeah.
All right. So how did so you said adopted. So I don't know I don't have adopted children, so I don't even know the process to begin with that, but I know this is some part of the story. So yeah, however you want to roll into it, my friend, hit it.
Hey, no, for sure. So one, I do feel like I want to give a disclaimer on the front end. We, as you and I were chatting, it was like, man, it is a kind of a different take on a rescue story. I do want to make it clear that we don't feel like we are rescuers. We don't feel like we're heroes in this story. Like it's not that at all. In fact, in many ways, we feel like our adopted children kind of rescued us, from just the kind of monotony of life, and kind of our perfect tight knit well-ordered household. It was like, hey, no, they kind of rescued us from that a bit, and maybe gave us a bigger vision for than the life we were living. And so just want to issue that disclaimer on the get-go. They're the real heroes in this. It's not us. They're 3 amazing kids who have endured really, really difficult life circumstances, and we're so glad to have them in our family. But yeah, the story goes, so my wife and I had no ambition to adopt. That was never really on my mind or my heart. It was always on my wife's. And she had, would drop comments throughout our marriage. It was like, man, I'd really love to adopt someday. And we got pretty serious about it multiple times throughout our marriage. And then it seemed like we always ended up pregnant. It was like, hey, we think the timing's right. And then it's like, nope, it's not right. And here's a pregnancy stick to prove it, like a pregnancy test. So, yeah, so we started and stopped multiple times with the adoption process. And then in 2015, we really felt like we'd had our fifth biological child, and really felt like we were done having biological kids. Said maybe this is really the time. The church where I was pastoring at had a really cool culture of adoption. Actually, over 100 children that had been adopted there.
Wow,
so it was something we were kind of, yeah, incredible. Just huge heart for vulnerable kids, and so we're surrounded by a great support system, and we were like, hey, maybe now is the time. So my wife was actually born in Port-au-Prince, Haiti. She's born to missionary parents, and she always thought, man, it'd be cool to adopt from Haiti. So we kind of started down that road. That door got closed very quickly, and we had some friends who had an orphan care center in Africa, and all of a sudden we heard about this little girl, 6 weeks old, found in a dumpster, and she was needed to be adopted, and so we were
dumpster?
kind of, yeah. So our
That's
hearts
terrible.
were, yeah. I mean, that obviously pulls it at the heartstrings, and
yeah,
we're like, hey, absolutely, we'd love to pursue adopting this little girl. Well, it turns out that another family, also, who was more paperwork ready, in a different part of the country, also were drawn to this little girl. And so they ended up adopting her, kind of getting in line ahead of us. And so that was hard at first, but then we felt like maybe that was just us being led to say, well, if we were willing to take her, what would keep us from pursuing other? There's literally millions of orphans globally, and so why not, maybe now is the right time, and so we kind of ventured down that road, and it eventually led us in 2016 to be matched with two orphaned children in a country called the Central African Republic. So didn't know anything about CAR. It's a large landlocked country right in the heart of sub-Saharan Africa.
Did you have to like bring up the globe and be like, where the heck is this? Because I do right now.
100% that. In fact, I went into this, it was a good thing I went into this with total ignorance, because that's where the story gets a little wild. Yeah, but landlocked country in the heart of sub-Saharan Africa, about the size of Texas, had come through really, really bad civil war in 2012, 2013. Hundreds of thousands of displaced people, tons of orphans left as a result of it. Just sent a country that was already in poverty to new heights of impoverishment. Became like a perennial top of the list on the World Poverty Index for poorest country on earth. And but anyway, we got matched with these two. They're double orphan, parents were all deceased. They're first cousins, and the first step for us to be like officially paired with them is to have what was like our agency required a bonding trip, which meant we had to actually meet these kids in person. And this happened very, very quickly. Like all of a sudden, we're matched with these two orphans, and we're buying plane tickets like within a week to go to a country that literally never heard of, didn't know anything about, but it's like, wow, let's do this. What an adventure. So yeah.
Oh my
god. So that's where we got, that's kind of phase one of the story. It's like, all right, we got our tickets bought, and we're gonna fly to the Central African Republic.
Let's get it on. Maybe we can
Let's
catch
get
a
it
safari
on.
on the back end. Like, hey, this would be
Totally.
great.
Totally.
You know what?
Like,
I think this
obviously,
one of the biggest mountains in the world. What is that? Kilimanjaro. That's right. We'll go hike that right after we're done. This will be an amazing trip.
It's so true, man. That's us. Like we're like, oh, clearly all Africa is the same. Like that's what we're thinking, and it's like, let's go. Well, we were in for quite the surprise and quite the education. So again, we had five bio kids, including a 2-year-old at the. So we're quick making logistics for us to be gone. My wife Michelle and I, to be gone for about 10 days to Central Africa. So morning comes that we're supposed to leave. I quick open up the news. We're driving to Minneapolis. We're located in Iowa. We're driving to Minneapolis to fly out of Minneapolis, St. Paul, and the headline, like on the news, is Delta experiences global computer outage, thousands of flights grounded. Well, of course, we're flying from Delta to Air France and to CAR. Where this gets complicated is that because of the instability in CAR, there is only 2 reputable flights that came in each week, like to the capital city. Literally,
wow.
Like Air France brings in a plane on a Tuesday and a plane on a Friday. and they land on the tarmac, the passengers get off, and the new passengers get on. There is no cleaning the plane, there is no refueling. They are not on. It is like off and you're on. You get on a filthy plane, and then they head to Cameroon, to Yaoundé, Cameroon, where then you get off the plane and they go through the whole cleaning procedures and feed you a meal and that sort of thing. But it's like they do not keep their aircraft on the ground any longer than possible. This was in 20. I'm not sure exactly what it's like today, but this was what it was like in 2016, as they were still facing a lot of instability from the civil war there. So anyway, so because of that, there's only those 2 flights. We had a connecting flight in Paris, France, and it only had a 2-hour layover. Well, we take off for Minneapolis because for all we knew, like the plane was still on time, like checking the website. Well, it turns out the website, none of the information on the website was accurate. So we get about 3/4 of the way to Minneapolis and find out our plane has been delayed 4 hours. Well, that means we're going to miss our 2-hour layover, or our 2-hour connecting flight in Paris, which means the next available flight into CAR is 4 days later. so
already the trip is going wonderfully, because now you stop in Paris, Eiffel Tower, glass of wine. Oh, this is a great move. I like all this.
Oh, totally. We're like, oh man, let's hang out in Paris for several days. No, so it already was like, okay, it took a couple of anxious, parents, and we're, even more anxious. we go to Paris. That's a whole nother story. What we thought was going to be kind of a cool little day layover ended up not being. It was super stressful, but that, again, a whole other story. But everything was kind of building at this point to greater and greater, like, okay, this is a very unique travel for us. So we eventually get to CAR. We fly into the capital city of Bangui, and I mean, it's very obvious that we're the only Westerner on the flight. We're the only, we stuck out like a sore thumb, let's just say that. and we get off the flight. We get connected with a missionary couple there, which something I probably should disclose. So this was essentially kind of a pilot program. Our kids that are adopted there it's only the 3rd family to ever adopt from CAR on record.
Wow.
Yeah, so no culture adoption, no no real pathways for that. There's just a lady from, actually, I'm not sure where she's from. I think she's from Iowa, who kind of pioneered a path forward to bring these 3 orphans home to the States to be part of her family. So anyway, so this is very there's not a pathway forward for this. You're kind of blazing your own trail. Lots of unknown. So we get to the capital city and we stay overnight there. And the next morning we pack up and we take off with our kind of host, who is one of the directors of the orphanage there. Incredible man, like literally like one of my greatest heroes in this life, what he's doing for orphan care. Speaks okay English,
Nice.
not great English. And then our driver. So it's just the 4 of us in this little truck, and we head off through the African countryside. And it's about a 4-hour drive from where we're at from the capital city to the orphanage where we're headed. And so we're headed down the road. It's hot. We're in this, dusty oven basically of a vehicle, and we keep getting to these checkpoints. Like there's all these, kind of police and military checkpoints where you pull up and, guys are walking around your vehicle with AKs, and they're kind of peeking in, and which is a little unsettling as you're, in a territory you've never been before, and just a little unnerving for us. And every time we would get to these checkpoints, our host would get out and he would leave the vehicle for a while. And we're just like, okay, and we're staying pretty well humored through it. Like my wife and I are taking video. We're like, we don't know what's going on, but here we are. What is our life? And
oh my gosh.
We keep driving, and each time we get to these checkpoints, it's a longer and longer wait till eventually we get to one where it's like they leave the car for like 25 minutes, and we're just sitting there by ourselves with people like walking through, like looking at us, examining the vehicle, and we have no idea what is going on. So after this one, get back in the vehicle, we take off, and we get about, I don't know, maybe a mile outside of this village. We're probably 3/4 of the way to where the orphanage is. So of this 4-hour drive, and we get about a mile out, and we meet this humanitarian aid truck that had food, and the 2 drivers exchange what are clearly very intense words. And our vehicle turns around really quickly and heads back to this vehicle that we were just at. And when we get there, we still have no idea what's going on. We get there, and our host like turns to me and he says, okay, Pastor, here is the situation. And it turns out that about 30 armed Celica rebel fighters had hijacked the bridge on the road that we were traveling on, just a few miles up, and it's the only way through to get to the village. And and he said, yes, here's last night they engaged in a gunfight with the villagers of the city we're in. 6 men were killed. Here's the blood on the road. Like, I mean, it's like all of a sudden we went from like, comically adventurous to like pretty nightmarish in a hurry, where we're like, what are we doing here? And you just start running through every scenario, and you've got your 5 kids back in the States, and just like, what is going on? And we know like we can't proceed with the adoption until we actually meet these kids like face to face. And the only thing standing between us and them happens to be like 30 armed rebel fighters. And
I don't think you're going to win that battle. I'm going to throw that out there. Just,
and especially not us. I mean, Jason, you and a lot of your listeners, I'm sure, could handle it. Not us. I'm like, I'm good at CrossFit. Actually, I'm not. I'm not even good at CrossFit. I'm like, I will pray for you. I mean,
you know what? Apparently, you have the upper hand. I'm going to throw that out there. All right.
Oh, yeah.
Get the man on your side.
I mean, I actually think so, because there's no other explanation for how the rest of the events unfolded. Yeah. So I mean, to say it was the most like anxious and fearful I've ever been in my life is not an overstatement. I really was like just a sense of, I feel helpless right now. I don't know what to do. I don't know. We've got our kids back home. We got our kids on the other side of this hijacked bridge, and you know, my wife's scared next to me. We don't speak anybody's language here. There is no, I mean, there's no, at the time, there's no U.S. embassy in CAR. There's no ambassador there. I mean, it's, you're on your own. And again, we went into this very ignorantly. Like the only real information that we had that shows that we weren't completely foolish is that there was a team who had just gone to this orphanage, a team from the States who had just gone to this orphanage a few weeks earlier. And they were like, yeah, we felt safe. Like, we felt good, no issues. They didn't have any issues. It was totally cool. And so we're like, oh, great. Well, we'll be fine. Just the two of us. We'll be totally fine. So we go back to it. So we're in this village where we're waiting, and he said, Pastor, we cannot pass through. But sometimes in situations like this, the UN will come through and kind of clean up the mess, or like, get the rebels to scatter. And so all of a sudden we're like, wait, this happens a lot, like you're like, oh, okay. And so he said, so we're just going to sit here because we've heard that there are troops coming. So we sit there. Well, now we're sitting in this village, and every time we hear an engine running, every time we see a truck rolling into the town, like everything, like I see and hear a truck, and then I turn and look at our host to see what's the reaction on his face, because the standard process here is rebels come into a village and you bolt for the jungle. Like you're like, I mean, people just scatter, And I'm like,
oh my Lord.
Yeah, just waiting. Like, okay, like, hey, lace up the shoes, because we're gonna take our chances with the green mambas instead of rebel fighters, right? Yeah. So finally, after, I mean, we probably sat there for a couple hours, and then finally I just tell, nobody's coming. And I tell our host, I said, if we were not here, if we were not with you, what would you be doing right now? He said, we would be back in the capital. We would have turned back and gone all the way. And so it made clear to me, like, they were like risking themselves to try to get us to the orphanage. And I was like, we need to go. We need to go back to the capital. So we load up in the vehicle. I did one part of the story is I got on the phone with actually the American man who's a dear friend of mine here, who started the orphanage years ago. And I explained the situation to him. He's like one of the most level-headed, unexcitable guys I know. I just love this dude. But I'm like, hey, here's what's going on. He goes, wow. He's like, yeah, I mean, it sounds like you got a little bit of a problem there. He's like, what? We're gonna die out here.
Understand the words that are coming out of my mouth right now?
We're about to be hostages, so. And nobody's coming for us. Yeah. So he said, well, he said, if you can find any French troops, any French soldiers there, like, ask them if you can get a military escort through, because the rebels won't engage with the French at all. They're like, they'll engage with the UN, they'll engage with CAR police, but they won't engage with the French. I'm like, you want me to do what? So we start driving back, and lo and behold, halfway there we come across a handful of armored vehicles that are French soldiers, and find one of them, that speaks English. He's kind of in charge of the thing, and explain the situation to him. I gave him the biggest sob story ever. I said, nothing about adoption, because that wouldn't, but I was just like, hey, we're here on a humanitarian mission, and we have medicine and we have supplies, and we need to get to this orphanage. It's critical, and is there any way that you can arrange for an escort for us? And they're like, no. Like what? They're like, what? They're like, what? They're like, what are, this is literally what they said. It says, what are you doing here? Like, why are you here? And then he says, you have no weapons. He says, you have no weapons. What are you doing here? And I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing here. I thought we were on a nice vacation. I mean, yeah. So we pleaded and pleaded. And I thought there was a moment in there where he's like really like softening the heart. Like I could see the wheels turning. And it just came down to, he's like, our orders are to stay here to ensure that rebels don't come back to the capital city. We cannot leave our post. And so we knew that wasn't an option. So then we head the rest of the way back to the capital city, and we get almost there. And then we meet a convoy of UN vehicles, and with the assumption that they're going to go try to get the road back open, And so we stay that night. We get back to the missionary place, and my wife just like falls in the arms of the missionary lady there, and sobbing, and they said, well, we've got word that there's UN, the UN are headed that direction. So we'll see what things are like in the morning. So we sleep that night and wake up the next morning. We get the news that UN had engaged, arrested a number of guys, and the rest had kind of fled to the jungle, and the road was back open. So
congratulations.
So, I'm like,
now, yeah. I do have a question. Like, did you actually sleep, or was it one of those things like you're sleeping with one eye open?
Let me just tell you, I prayed a lot that night. I prayed a lot. My wife crashed hard. Oh, actually, you want to know what I legitimately did? So my wife crashed hard. She was so emotionally exhausted. And I did a CrossFit workout in my room. I was like, I'm so amped up right now. Like I cannot get my body. So I did like a burpee, air squat, push up, sit up, workout. It's like 100 degrees. I'm just sweating for the next 5 hours. Yeah, so no, probably very little sleep, but the adrenaline was at an all-time high. Yeah, so we sleep the next morning. We head out again, terrified the whole time. And I did find out that it actually put us at ease a little bit, that when we were talking to the missionaries that we were staying with, they said, you can absolutely trust your host. And he did the right thing. He said they live with this sort of thing regularly. And he said, a lot of times these types of situations will, over the course of a 4-hour drive, they'll get cleaned up. Like they really will. But it's just kind of a way of life there. And he said, and so what he did, the reason that every checkpoint was a longer and longer wait, is he made absolutely certain that there was no threatening activity happening between that checkpoint and the next checkpoint. And so he did everything he was supposed to do. And at the end of the day, he was like, he didn't tell you what was going on because he was hoping he wouldn't have to tell you what was going on. But it got to kind of the final hour, and he's like, we're not going to be able to go through. So honestly, that put me at ease a bit, where I was like, okay, this guy really is looking out for us. And he's the primary caregiver at the orphanage. And so this is a guy, like he wanted and needed to get back to the kids at the orphanage. But when it became obvious that he wasn't going to risk it, we certainly needed to not risk it. And yeah, so anyway, we took off the next morning, and lo and behold, we made it. We made it 4 hours, got there. Again, same thing, every checkpoint, but it was pretty smooth sailing that time. By the time we got there, it was like the reality of meeting our future children, that sense of like the mental space and the emotional energy going into that overrode every of the trauma that we had just experienced.
Yeah, that is so cool. Oh man.
Yeah. So we met these kids, and it was even that, like, these kids had never, like, they had never seen white people. And so they weren't exactly like excited to see us. They were a little terrified. Yeah, so even that, it was like we were just there for 2 days, because again, our trip, because of the issue with Delta and our flights, our trip went from like 10 days down to about 4 or 5 days. And so we were only at the orphanage for about 48 hours. Got to interact with the kids as best as we could. And I did some pastoral training with some pastors there. And then we turned around and say goodbye and headed back, and came back to the States and said, okay, well, we're going to try to get this adoption done as quick as we can and go back and bring the kids home. And that's what we did a year later. So
it took a whole year to get back there for them?
Yeah. Yep. So the whole process from the time, which honestly, Jason, was actually really fast, especially with sub-Saharan adoptions. There's just a ton of corruption, and there's just unfortunately a lot of wicked things that can come with adoption. And so it is a long, arduous process. Our most recent adoption was actually a 3-year process that was really painful. But so that one, actually, the year was pretty smooth. And then our trip to actually go bring them home was actually the polar opposite. It went as smoothly as we could have asked, and our time with the kids was incredible. And they slept almost the entire flight back to the United States, which is very, very unheard of for adoptions like this. A lot of times the flight to the States is the worst possible thing, and our kids were champs. So so anyway, it's a wild story. There's a whole lot of other details in there that
my gosh,
we missed, but yeah, pretty crazy. And so now they've been those two children have been with us for we brought them home in 2017, so 5 years. We just celebrated the 5-year gotcha date.
Oh, congratulations to you and to them. That's awesome.
Yep. Totally cool. Man. Totally cool.
Wow, man. Holy cow. That is crazy. All right, so on your return, so now you get the adoption process done. You get to go get the children and bring them back with you. Easy, like when you tell me, like, oh, it was easy. It was there and back, and no issues, no checkpoints, or you had to go through checkpoints. You still had to do kind of the same stuff, or
what's wild is, so when we got back from that first trip, the very, very traumatic trip, I was like, okay, I probably should do some research on this country. And I actually, like, right away, I found an article on this exact event, on these 30 Celica rebels that had hijacked the bridge. Saw that, and because it was a UN report on rebel activity in the area, and so I saw that. that led me kind of down a rabbit trail of research in the country. Well, lo and behold, I come across a Canadian Travel Ministries website and their list of like travel advisories, and they haven't had like just a couple of weeks before we traveled there had released their list of the top 50 most dangerous countries on earth, and along with their travel recommendations connected to them, and I'm getting through, and I'm getting to like the top 10. I still haven't seen Central African Republic on there. It's like, I wonder if I missed it. I'm going by Syria, Afghanistan, North Korea, Sudan. Like, and I get to like number 2, and it's Chad, and Chad is the country that directly borders CAR to the north. And I was like, no way. And I click on the next one. Of course, they're number 1 most dangerous country on earth at the time, Central African Republic. And I was like, and it says like
a great vacation.
Oh, dude, it's like in bright red, like, do not travel under any circumstances. We will not help you. We will not aid you. We will say no help if something goes down. And I was like, oh, well, that's Canada. No.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to laugh. All my Canadian friends. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. Lots of friends from Canada. But anyway, so even just last night in preparation for this, I was like, well, the country's come a long way in the last 6 years, 5 years, and so 6 years since we were first there. Still in their top 10, and it says do not travel there. We've been there multiple times since then. I took my oldest son with me a couple of years ago, and a beautiful country, beautiful people who have endured so much, have suffered so much, and are just incredibly resilient, and the type of context that makes you kind of look at your own life and say, man, I just take everything for granted. I do. There's no way around it. Like I just take the most simple of daily necessities for granted. And but yeah, your question about so the next trip a year later really did go flawlessly. We actually didn't go to Sierra because there was no embassy there. They didn't issue visas. The visas were actually issued at the embassy in Cameroon, and so they had to travel to Cameroon, where we met them there, and then got their visas, and then departed from there to come back to the States. And so we had a few days with them in Cameroon, and then the trip home was really smooth. And our kids just, our bio kids embraced them really beautifully.
That's awesome.
And
I like that.
And it's like, yeah, I mean, within it really was no time. And this is not a lot of people's story, because adoption is hard. It's there's a lot of heartache. Every adoption story starts with loss. The reality, like our children suffered unspeakable loss, and in the death of their parents, and then the orphanage they were raised in, departing from that orphanage, and their peers there, that's loss as well. And coming to a new culture, loss of culture, like all those sorts of things. So adoption is really hard, and then navigating the types of traumas that many adopted children have faced. And for whatever reason, call it the grace of God or dumb luck, whatever it is, we've been super blessed. Our kids, they're Roethlisbergers. Like they're just, we're kind of one big crazy bunch. We all have our issues. We're messy and loud and obnoxious, and love Jesus. Maybe swear a little here and there. It's like,
so what you're saying is you're human. I like that.
We're human. Too. We're
yep.
human, as human as they get. Yeah. But they're doing really well, man. Like we just adore them. There was one night where they were they were a little slow getting to the dinner table. I don't remember what they were doing, and all my bio kids were sitting at the table first, and I just looked at them and said, "You guys, this is what our life would be like. This is what it would look like if we hadn't adopted." And one of my bio kids looks around and goes like, "Oh, it'd be so boring." I'm like, "There's still 7 of us here." Like, you realize that's still like abnormal, for the culture. But I was like, I think you're right. I think we'd be a little bored. So
That's so
they're
funny.
doing great. We're doing good. And like the way I started off, our talk, they were in dire circumstances. There had the orphanage there not intervened, um, they would not have survived. When I mean, the photos of my son are, when they found them, they're just horrific. They're horrific. The skin and bones that made up his body, and they were in very dire circumstances. And so really the first hero in the story is the orphanage who reached out and brought him in and nursed him back to health, and literally like brought him back from the dead. And then
Wow.
and then our part in it was, we just said yes, and kind of disrupted our life a bit to bring them in. But at the end of the day, like, we feel like they have given so much to us, like so much to us as a family, that we don't feel like heroes. We don't feel like rescuers. We feel like we're the ones that have been so blessed by them. And it's a cool story. It's still early in the story.
That's awesome.
We're only 5
Yeah.
years in, 6 years in, but so it's still early in the story. So who knows what?
Well,
what
let me ask you another little question. Like, because you mentioned a year between when you met them and then having to go back. So those kids had to live in the orphanage for that year, waiting for that to happen, in everything that's going on, the turmoil that's going on. I know you mentioned trauma because they lost both their parents and then malnourished and trying to bring them back. But do you know what they went through in that year? Were you in contact with the orphanage to find out, like, keep updates?
Yeah, fortunately, I mean, there's a lot of horror stories of orphanage life, in various countries throughout the world. We really do believe our kids received the best of care that they could get in that specific context. Again, the director says one of the guys I trust most in the world is the most self-sacrificial guys that I know, who's just said yes to orphan care, and while caring for his own family and his own kids. And the guy here in the States who started the orphanage many years ago is one of the most humble, gracious guys that I know. And so yeah, we were constantly in communication, and because our kids were so young at the point, we weren't in communication with them very much, because their level of understanding was pretty low, and they didn't speak any English. But in terms of the workers on the ground there, as well as the administrators here on the state side, we're in regular communication with. And since then, the level of trust that we had in the care that they were being given during that time has only been confirmed since then, because we've now since been through another adoption process. We've been there, I think, a total, between my wife and I and my son, I think we've been there a total of 5 or 6 times over the last 5 years. So it's been we've just felt a lot of affirmation that they really did receive as good a care as they could have in that time. And then the most recent adoption we went through, he was quite a bit older. So we started the process when he was 8. We brought him home when he was 11, and he had been in the orphanage since he was 5. So he spent 6 years in that orphanage, and he has been able to share with us, a lot of things that put us at at ease, that they really were cared for well. And during the 3 years with him, we were able to communicate with him specifically a lot more than we were our first two because of the age difference there. So
when you first met the kids in Africa, how old were they?
they were 2, and we brought them home at 3. So
Oh my God.
yeah,
So
yeah,
very young.
very young. Yep. They had one of
Wow.
them. The father had already passed away, and the mom passed away like not long after childbirth, and the other one was I think was within a year or so of that. And so they're biological cousins. They're only a few months apart in age. So yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Wow. What a story. My gosh. Shane, that's awesome. That is so cool.
It's a little adventure.
A little adventure. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
All right. So, yep, go ahead.
I was gonna say one funny part of the story. I told you how it's forever intertwined with our VersaLift story. I literally, I started the company because we had started the adoption process, and I said, I was like praying, I'm a man of faith, and I was like, Lord, I need a way to generate more revenue for my household. And lo and behold, like a week later, I found myself in this factory with this idea for our heel lift inserts, and we got our very first sale. So I spent 6 months kind of doing R&D and some market testing and prototyping, all that sort of stuff. And then we when we went live online, we got our very first sale like right as we were ready to leave the country for the crazy story that I told you.
Yeah.
Like right as we were, and so we got our first sale, shipped it out, and then shut down the website because we were going to Africa, and we're like, we can't fulfill orders in Africa. And went to Africa, and a month later fired the site back up, and then that kind of launched us into the VersaLift story.
Oh my gosh. That's incredible. I love it. I love it. For everybody out there, Shane, if you don't mind, what is the process like? What do people have to do to do something like this in order to adopt and go even through? Because me personally, I have no idea where to even begin.
Yeah. Well, man, I unfortunately, kind of what I alluded to earlier, it's rarely a streamlined process. It is an incredibly dynamic and volatile world that is adoption, because you're talking about in most cases the most vulnerable people groups on planet Earth, children, and it's easy for them to be taken advantage of. It's easy for corrupt people to try to use it as a means for financial gain and power gain. So those are the devastating things connected to adoption. But as a result of it, that means that government policy can get very laborious. Adoption agencies come and go because of how hard it can be. So not every country is like that. Certainly there's domestic adoptions through foster care in the U.S., which also has plenty of challenges as well. And we started down that road a couple of times and had those doors closed. But really, the first step for somebody who's like, man, I feel called to adoption, is to get connected with a reputable agency. That's actually let me take it back. I'll take it a step back even further than that, because I'll put my pastor hat on.
I love it.
And what I tell people, because we get a lot of people who will ask, say, hey, can we talk to you about adoption? We got a heart for this, your story. And I'll say, well, the first thing is to sit down with some really, really trusted people in your life and say, hey, tell us what we need to hear about our like life and our marriage, and like, do you think that we're a good fit for this? Because a lot of people will have kind of the heartstrings going deep, man. A lot of people will have their heartstrings tugged by the story, you know, even like our story. That's like, it's really it can be easy to get people excitable about something like this and be like, man, I want to adopt like that. But the most important consideration is not, do you want to adopt? The most important consideration is, what is in the best interest of this child or these children? And you got to be willing to be really honest about your own life and circumstance. I mean, I tell people, like, if there's a married couple who comes to us and says, hey, we're interested in adoption, the first thing I say is, how much do you like each other? Like, and they're like, wait, what? And I'm like, no, like how much do you, this is an honest question, not like, do you love each other? Not, are you committed to your covenant of marriage? Like, how much do you like each other? Because you're gonna enter into chaos. And if marriage is hard for you, it's not gonna get better because of the adoption road. Like, that is not a wound, or that's not like a healing balm for you. It is going to test you in every single way. And if you guys
sometimes people just need a little bit of honesty. I'm just saying,
bro, for real. And so, like, if you're not in a place where you feel like you can laugh through the chaos, it's going to be hard to create the type of home that promotes the flourishing of that child, or children. And so that's kind of like the first step, is like, hey, get around some trusted people and be like, hey, do you think that we would be the kind of home that would really promote the flourishing of another child? Do you think we could handle that? Do you think we're mentally stable enough for that? Like, we're emotionally stable for that? We're relationally stable enough for that? That's step one right there.
Wow. Yeah, that's deep. That's good though. I mean, because you're right. I mean, I could, man, even go try with a goldfish first, and then we'll see how,
yeah, that's step two. Get a goldfish and a plant.
Did you want the plant and feed the fish? No, I wanted the fish and fed the plant. What is wrong with
you? You shouldn't adopt.
Yeah, no. Oh my gosh.
Man. Yeah.
Man, that's awesome. I like it.
Yeah. Well, but then from there, if you feel affirmed in that, you know, and you're like, man, I look at our household and the kids are flourishing, the marriage is flourishing, and so you feel more called in that direction, then from there it's like, hey, get connected with a reputable, do your research, get connected with a reputable adoption agency who knows the ins and outs of international adoption law, because that was the mess on our last adoption. Is our biggest hurdle was not navigating CAR. Our biggest hurdle was navigating the U.S. State Department, and so there are major roadblocks there. And so we didn't have those issues the first couple of times we did this most recent round. So that's where a reputable adoption agency would. It's just super critical in the process.
Nice. Well, you guys did it, man, and that is awesome. I'm super stoked for you guys. I'm super pumped for the kids. Like, just dude, that's awesome. That is great. Totally great.
Thanks, man. Thanks.
Yeah. Heck yeah.
It's been a trip.
Shane, this is one heck of a story, man, and I can't thank you enough for coming on and really telling us this. I do have a kind of a random question, which, you know, it does have to do with the brand, but it also ties in with your story. Heel lifts, really? Like heel lifts? Was there a child labor law thing that you were trying to like bypass? I mean, you know, 9 kids, really, and a heel lift? I'm thinking something's going on here, man.
It's quite the factory we've got set up here, man. The funny thing about that, man, is like I mean, we're a small family owned business, and yeah, like absolutely my kids have touched a lot of pairs of VersaLifts. And they have put them in
I'm
packages.
sure they have.
Oh man, yeah. It's been wild, man. It's actually been pretty fun. You know, my kids have gotten to see, you know, all they've really known is me and vocational ministry, and so to be on this kind of entrepreneurial journey with us has been pretty cool too. I think, you know, certainly my older kids, my teenagers, have learned a ton about business ownership and
Oh, that's super cool. Yeah.
you know, and yeah, inventory management and customer service, and so it's been pretty cool, you know. Even manufacturing, you know, as we've navigated prototypes and blah blah blah. But yeah, heel lift, man. I you know, I told you the part of the story where we kind of prayed and need a way to generate additional revenue. Well, I had an old football injury. My right ankle was sprained multiple times, and I couldn't do pistol squats on my right leg without my heel coming off the ground.
Stupid pistols. I
Who's
still can't do
who's
it.
been there? Like everybody's like, you know, and I was like, you know, I came across these heel lift inserts that were actually created for a different purpose, for a different function. But I was like, man, I think that idea would solve my problem. Did a little market research, didn't really see anything out that existed in the CrossFit world like that, and I tried them out, immediately fell in love with these, and I was like, man, this could really be something. And I worked with the owner of the company, tried to convince him, hey, let me help you get into a new market. And he's like, no, I don't I don't, that CrossFit stuff you showed me, like, that's terrible. Like, people are all going to need knee replacement surgery and hip, you know, like all that. Couldn't convince him. And so then I was like, well, treat me like a distributor, and I'll just buy wholesale and private label. And so that's what we did. He was like, yeah, just give me the money and I'll give you inventory. And and so
Perfect.
then we launched that way, and that's kind of how we got our start. And a few years later, I said we could really improve upon the product if we started from scratch with our own design for our applications, and that's what launched us into the V2, and then the V2 strength and V2 endurance, and yeah. So we, you know, people look at it, they're like, what is it that you do? And I'm like, I make shoe inserts. Like, it's like the most anticlimactic. You know,
like,
really, VersaLifts, like, you do shoe inserts.
People buy that for what?
Yeah.
Because we want to do pistols, damn it.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so that's what we're in. We actually do believe a lot in the squat as like a foundation to human movement. Even that's kind of a funny thing. Like, globally, you go like anywhere, particularly developing world, developing countries, and like, man, people know how to squat, like they do. Yeah. But man, we don't know how to squat here in America. I mean, it's like, and it's affecting like quality of life, you know. And so anyway, so that's a part of what we're doing, is like, man, we want people to squat well. We have this slogan, you know, our kind of motto is depth matters, and
which I love that, by the way.
Thanks, man. Yeah. And so that's like there's the explicit, which is range of motion in your squat from top to bottom, but like the heart of our little modest business endeavor here is the deeper meaning behind it, no pun intended, but is like living a life of depth, and one that doesn't just hang out in the safe, shallow spaces, but one that takes risks and is bold and steps out of the ordinary, and depth of character, depth of relationships, depth of story, you know. And so yeah, that's that. VersaLifts, # depth matters.
Yeah, I love it. Hey, just out of curiosity, are your kids into CrossFit too, or are they like whatever?
Yeah. My teens both do it. My son,
Okay.
we moved unfortunately as part of the move. We're in the middle of nowhere. Like I grew up in super rural, far northeast Iowa. Closest CrossFit gym is it's like an hour and a half drive. There's nowhere, not that you'd know anything about that and being
actually no,
being in the
my
Middle
gym
East
is like, I got a gym right here, like bike ride away. There are a couple blocks.
That's awesome,
and I'm in.
Well, you have way more access than we do in rural. So literally right over here, we've got mats set up and barbells, and so my son bangs it out with us at 6 o'clock in the morning, and it's really getting into it. As soon as volleyball season's over, my daughter she'll be joining us as well.
Yes.
And yeah, it's fun, man. I love working out with our teens. They're into it, and every once in a while, one of the youngsters will jump in and say, "Dad, program a workout for me." But,
okay, let's go. You know what? My oldest is into it as well with me, and she beat me by 12 seconds today on what was it, like a V-ups, alternating V-ups and box jump burpee box jump overs in 12 seconds. I was like,
good for her, man.
Yeah,
she must be awesome, dude. You're fit, dude. She must be becoming.
At one point, I kid you not, she's like done with the V-ups, and I don't know if she had done a couple burpee box jumps, whatever, but she's sitting there like sipping on a water bottle, looking at me like, "What's up?" Put the water bottle back down there, and I'm like breathing out my ass. I'm like, "What is the deal?" Like, oh, okay, I got it.
Oh, there comes a time, man.
Yep.
There comes a time where we realize we're not in our prime anymore.
You know what? Throw some weight on that bar. I'll teach you how to do it. Oh God. Shane, again, I cannot thank you enough for coming on and sharing this story. I am so pumped to have you here, and thank you. Just thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Well, it's an honor to be here, man, and thanks for all you do, and for all your listeners, and for your service. We're a super grateful people that our story's made possible because we live in a place that we live in where we're free to conduct the type of business that we do and live the type of adventurous life that we do. And so most grateful for you, brother.
Right on. Thanks, man. And that's for everybody else out there too, man. That's not just for me. Okay. Just throw that out there too. So I will see you at, I don't know, probably the next CrossFit Games, or hopefully sooner if I can make it through town. All right.
Yes, sir.
Sounds right awesome. On. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we are out of here. Go. Thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Real ResQ podcast. Please take a minute to like, subscribe, and hit that share button. I'm pulling chocks and taking off. But before I go, if anyone out there has a rescue story they would be willing to share, I would be humbled and honored to have you on as a guest. Or if you have any questions about rescue or anything else we talk about here, send an email to jason@therealresq.com. That's Jason at TheRealResQ.com. You can also check us out on our web pages, therealresq.com, our Facebook page, and our Instagram page @TheRealResQ. Again, a special thank you to all of you staying on the watch today. Always remember, when that SAR alarm goes off, those in distress are praying for a miracle. They are going to get you. Until next time, fly safe and swim hard.